Hello, Cornerstone family, and everyone else who's been listening to these. We're in the book of Colossians. We were actually doing Colossians before we took a break on Easter week or Resurrection week to look at the last week in Christ's life. And during that week, I expanded out who I sent these to. So many of you maybe have not been following us with Colossians. But we're going back to Colossians. We're at the end of chapter 2. The book of Colossians is fundamentally about Jesus Christ, the superiority of Christ, the sufficiency of Christ, how Christ is the image of the invisible God. He is the firstborn of all creation. He's the head over the body, that is the church. He's the firstborn from the dead to never die again. All these different titles are given to him. And we learn that through Christ's death on the cross, we have been reconciled to the Father. And we've been reconciled to one another. So, there's a person who's come into Colossae, the town of Colossae, or the church of Colossae. And evidently he's proclaiming a different Christ, or that Christ alone is not sufficient. And he's bringing in some of his weird experiences in theology. It appears that some of his theology is a Jewish flavor to it, keeping the holidays and the Sabbaths and things like that. So we're at the point now at the end of chapter 2 where Paul has told them, hey, hold fast to the head. That's Jesus. Hold fast to him. Don't accept any of this other baloney. So I'm going to read to you the verses from chapter 2, verse 20 to the end of the chapter. Because Paul goes into this, this imagery he uses a lot. You've died with Christ. You've been raised with Christ. So today we're going to look at you've died with Christ. So verse 20, chapter 2, verse 20. If with Christ you died to the elemental spirits of the world, why, as if you still live in the world, do you submit to regulations? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. Referring to things that all perish as they are used, according to human precepts and traditions. They have indeed an appearance of wisdom in promoting self-made religion and asceticism and severity to the body, but are of no value in stopping the indulgences of the flesh. So, chapter 3 goes on, if you've been raised with Christ. So we're going to talk about this for about 3 days, this idea of died with Christ, raised with Christ. But here he's responding in chapter 2, verse 20 to the end of the chapter. He's responding to whoever's come into the church in Colossae and is distorting the gospel, distorting the work of Christ, and bringing in Jewish legalism. And you have to understand this. We talked about this last time we talked about Colossians. There's nothing wrong with rules. But when rules become the basis of your relationship with God, that becomes a man-made religion. And in Paul's day, it was this combination of Christianity and Judaism, where Jesus has distorted who he is, and we're going to bring in some of these laws from the Old Testament, and we're going to mix them together and create something that does not give you power over the flesh. Well, in our world today, we have a lot of different man-made religions, don't we? I mean, think about the different, major cults out there, but there's also a lot of new spirituality. I remember talking to a young person recently, and this person isn't a believer in Jesus, and talking about what God had done in my life. And it was just referring to a specific event God had done. And this person said to me, well, how do you know it was God? How do you know it just wasn't the universe that did that? And I said, the universe, explain what you mean. Well, just the universe. The universe is out there. The universe is guiding us. And I said, so you believe in this impersonal universe that personally gets involved in your life? And I said, that makes no sense to me. And when I said, I have a personal God and his son, Jesus Christ, who's involved in my life, they said, well, that's your truth. And this is my truth. So then we explored the idea of how we can have personal truths and how that works out. But this person was utterly convinced that the universe was personally involved in my life, even though the universe is not a personal being. And it was a girl, that she could have this truth, and I didn't have to accept her truth, and she doesn't have to accept my truth. And so this is the new, as Paul calls it here, the man-made religion that in the end sounds good. It's kind of cool. I can have some spirituality to my life by believing in the universe. I can have a feeling of purpose because the universe has given me purpose. But in the end, I don't have a personal God I'm accountable to, a personal God who has a calling on my life. It's a great way to have a spirituality, to believe in the universe, but a personal God who has purpose for me, who has boundaries of which I live within because they're good for me. When you just believe in the universe, you can do what you want because no one holds you accountable. So you can see this is one example of the man-made religions today. And Paul is saying to the Colossians, and we need to apply it to us today, that we have died to these things. We now live with Jesus Christ. He has been raised from the dead. And we'll talk about that tomorrow, what it means to be raised with Christ. But now that we have died with Christ, let's stop submitting to the legalism of the world, the foolishness of man-made religions of the world, and keep our eyes on Jesus. What I want you to do tomorrow is read chapter 3, what it means to be raised with Christ, and the ramifications of that today. So we'll talk again tomorrow. Have a great day.